Right inside the hidden room behind the Red Rock Saloon, 2 young women are tied up, forced to choose between honor and survival. And in just a few more minutes, the most unexpected person will arrive and change everything. The air was thick with the stench of cheap bourbon, sweat, and fear. The rope cut into Clara's wrists until they bled, while Anna, her younger sister, shivered like a leaf before the storm. In front of them stood Earl Mathers, the scar-faced, barrel-bellied saloon owner, and Tom Briggs, his henchman who toyed with a dagger as he grinned wickedly. "No money? Then you pay another way," Earl growled, grabbing Clara, his whiskey, soaked breath hot against her face. "You or her. Choose." Clara clenched her teeth, swallowing her tears. "Take me. Do not touch her." Anna screamed. "Somebody, please, help us." In full, her cry pierced through the raucous saloon, and at that very moment, the most unlikely hero was making his way closer. If you want to know what happens next, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you will not miss out. Out front, the piano suddenly went silent, as if someone had strangled the sound mid-note. Gideon Hale set his bourbon glass down on the counter. He had only come in to buy tobacco, but that desperate cry from the back room struck him like a hammer to the past. A past where he had once lost his daughter because he was too late. The crowded saloon seemed to hold its breath. Gideon rose to his feet. His shoulders were narrow, his hair dusted with grey, and his eyes the colour of ashes. He was just a farmer, yet the weight of an old Colt revolver still hung heavy at his hip, a weapon he had sworn never to draw again. He pushed open the back door. Before him, Clara pinned down, Anna bound to a chair, Earl towering like a wall, and Tom brandishing a gleaming knife. For one frozen heartbeat, time stood still. "Get out, old man," Earl snarled. Gideon did not move. He looked at Clara shielding her sister with her own body. That image struck him like lightning. Let her go. His voice was rough, but it thundered. Tom jumped, his knife flashing. Or what? Gideon did not touch his gun. Yet the room shifted. The air grew heavy, like the storm before it breaks. Earl faltered. Tom's grin faded. Everyone knew the legend. Gideon never wasted a bullet. He repeated, each word like a nail. Let her go. The whole saloon seemed to lean toward that room, waiting. Gideon now stood at a crossroads. Walk away in silence, or take up a fight that would change his life forever. And this time, he would not be late. So tell me, should Gideon draw his gun now, or try to bargain first? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. The room was suffocating, the hiss of the oil lamp crackling like a rifle being cocked. Gideon stood motionless, his hand resting lightly on the Colt. Earl growled, "Get out, old man." She already agreed. Consider it payment for her family's debt. Anna burst into sobs, her voice breaking. "Do not believe him. Please save my sister." That sound cut into Gideon's heart like a blade. He saw his daughter again, that night long ago, calling out in despair. That time, he had been too late. Not tonight. Gideon drew. The motion was swift, sharp, precise. The click of the hammer filled the room like thunder. Tom froze, his knife clattering to the floor. Earl stiffened, his grin gone. "Untie them, now." Gideon's voice was a sentence past. Earl snarled, "You know what you are doing? You are going against the law, against me. Your law does not exist here, not while I breathe." Clara looked at him, tears glistening with the first spark of hope. Earl cursed under his breath, then yanked at the ropes. Anna collapsed forward, but Clara caught her. The sisters clung to each other, trembling. Tom backed to the door, hands raised. Earl stood rigid, but everyone knew Gideon never wasted a bullet. "Get out, both of you!" Gideon spat the words like iron. Earl's face flushed crimson as he grudgingly retreated. Before disappearing, he hissed through his teeth, "This is not over, Hale. You will pay." The door slammed shut like a hammer strike. Silence fell. Only the sound of ragged breaths and pounding hearts remained. Clara sank down, clutching Anna. "My God, you saved us." Gideon kept his gun aimed at the door a moment longer before lowering it. His face was stone, but in his ashen eyes, a storm 10 years buried had just been unleashed. The room was left with nothing but the sound of quickened breaths and loosened ropes sliding to the floor. Clara held Anna tightly, trembling as if letting go would let the darkness take her once more. Gideon holstered his gun. The motion was calm, but his eyes were heavy. He had broken a vow buried for 10 years, and he knew there was no turning back. Clara looked up, her voice trembling. "You do not even know us. Why risk everything to save us?" Gideon lowered himself, his voice rough like desert wind. "Because once my daughter cried for help, and no one stood up. I will not let that happen again." Clara fell silent. Anna clutched her sister's shoulder, whispering, "We are safe now, right?" Gideon's gaze shifted to the door Earl had left through. His voice was slow, heavy as lead. "Not yet. Men like Earl never forget humiliation." No. Night draped itself over the west. Wind lashed against broken boards. Gideon guided the sisters to his horse, taking them to his worn farm at the valley's edge. The wooden house leaned, the fence sagged, but the lamp glowed inside like a fortress. In the kitchen, he poured well water, set bread on the table. The sisters ate quickly, too drained to speak. Gideon watched in silence, memories of nights with his daughter pressing in. Clara finally broke the silence. "What if Earl comes back?" "Not if. When," Gideon replied, eyes cold as steel. "But this time he will learn he is not the only one ready." Anna trembled. "You are just one man. How can you stand against all of them?" Gideon's lips curved in a dry, brittle laugh. "One man, if his hand is steady and his conscience is clean, might be enough." The room sank into silence. Then, faint outside the window hoofbeats, a shadow flickered past the broken fence. Clara held her breath. Anna gripped her cup, shaking. Gideon turned, his ashen eyes flashing with steel. He whispered, "He will not wait long." Dawn broke over the Hale farm with a pale light. Clara and Anna huddled by the table, eyes shadowed by a sleepless night. They had escaped Earl, but fear still clung to them. Out by the stable, Gideon worked in silence. Clara stepped onto the porch, shawl wrapped tight. "You really believe he will come back today?" she asked softly. "Earl lost face last night," Gideon said, his ash-grey eyes fixed on the misty fields. "Men like him never swallow humiliation." "Law." Anna shivered, clutching a mug of coffee larger than her hands. "What if he brings guards? Or the sheriff?" "The law here belongs to Earl," Gideon said flatly. "Deputy Crow is filthier than the outlaws." The answer left Clara speechless. Safety felt as fragile as a veil before a desert storm. Gideon ordered firmly, "Stay inside. If there is trouble, go down to the cellar. Do not show your faces." Clara wanted to protest, but his gaze stopped her cold. Gideon mounted his horse and rode off, his figure swallowed by the morning dust. In town, the Red Rock buzzed with rumour. Old farmer Gideon Hale had dared to challenge Earl Mathers. People whispered, half admiring, half afraid. At the centre sat Earl with Tom Briggs. Beside them lounged Deputy Crow, silver badge gleaming. When Gideon stepped in, the floorboards groaned under his boots, and all talk died. "Well, well," Earl bellowed, his voice filling the saloon. You think saving those girls means they are free from me? The air grew taut as a bowstring. Gideon stopped in the center, his voice slow but sharp. They are free. And if you touch them, you answer to me. Crow chuckled dryly, tapping the silver badge on his chest. The law is right here. If Earl says they still owe, then they owe. Simple as that. Gideon's eyes narrowed. The packed saloon was silent as death. Not this time. Not while I live. A ripple spread through the crowd. Earl sneered. Then this town will learn who it belongs to. At that moment, Crow laid his hand on his gun. Metal glinted under the lamplight. The crowded saloon held its breath, waiting to explode. By noon, the western sun scorched like fire. Dust rose in clouds under hooves. Leading the posse was Earl Mathers, face red, eyes burning. At his side rode Tom Briggs, hand resting on his pistol. Behind them, Deputy Crow sat smug, silver badge flashing. At the far end, Gideon Hale stood tall on the porch of his old farm, a Winchester rifle in hand. Behind him, Clara and Anna clung together, fearful yet resolute. Townsfolk crowded both sides of the street. No one wanted to miss this. Everyone felt it. Today would change everything. Earl roared, "Old man, you harbour debtors and liars. You hide their crimes." Crow raised his badge, voice as sharp as rusted steel. "The law stands with us. If Earl says they owe, then they owe. That is enough." Gideon lowered his rifle slightly, his voice booming like a hammer strike. "Everyone here knows the truth. You have seen the bruises on their arms. You know what Earl and Crow are. The law is not a badge. The law is justice. And justice has been absent from this place for too long." The crowd murmured. A long smothered fire sparked alive. Clara stepped forward, pulling Anna with her, voice trembling but clear. "We are not the only victims. We are just the ones left alive to tell it." Like a flame to dry grass, voices rose. A man recounted being beaten by Crow. A woman sobbed, recalling debts that tore her family apart. One voice joined another. Fear turned to anger. Earl paled. Crow lost his smirk. The crowd surged forward, eyes sharp as unseen spears. Within moments, Earl and Tom were bound, dragged away. Crow's badge was ripped from his chest, his face ghostly, as the townsfolk demanded open trial. When the dust settled, Gideon lowered his rifle. His shoulders sagged, but in his ashen eyes a faint light returned. Clara came forward, her hand on his. No words were needed. Between them, silence was no longer despair. It was a beginning. Far away, the church bell tolled, its sound stretching across the red-roofed town. For the first time in years, the town heard the sound of hope. The evening sky burned red as the sun sank behind the mountains, casting long shadows across Gideon's farm. Silence reigned, broken only by wind whistling through broken fences. Gideon stood on the porch, his figure etched against the sky, like an old oak, scarred but unbroken. Inside, Clara and Anna sat by the fire, its golden glow-warming faces still etched with fear, yet their eyes no longer held, only trembling they carried a fragile hope. Their story did not end at survival. It became proof. A man can grow old, scarred, and believe his days of heroism are gone. But if he chooses to rise, if he chooses to do what is right, he can still turn the tide of a town. Courage does not mean the absence of fear. Courage means stepping forward even when your heart pounds in terror. It is facing the darkness even knowing the price could be your very life. So let me ask you, if you were Gideon, would you walk away or stand against evil? And if you were Clara, would you find the strength to speak out, even when silence seemed safer? This is not just a tale of the Wild West, but timeless questions worth carrying with us always. The next morning, sunlight poured over the Hale farm, gilding its weathered roof. The air still held the chill of night. Clara and Anna sat quietly on the porch, eyes weary but changed. They were no longer prisoners of fear. They had spoken, stood, and the town had answered. Out by the stable, Gideon fed his old horse. His motions were slow, steady, as though the world had not shifted. Yet anyone watching closely could see his shoulders were lighter, as though a burden of 10 years had been set down. Clara walked up, shawl drawn tight, her voice low. "Do you think Earl will come back?" Gideon stroked the horse's mane, eyes fixed on the horizon. Men like him never truly vanish. But now it is different. Now he faces a whole town, not just me. Anna stood behind her sister, clutching a mug of hot coffee. Her voice trembled, but steadier than yesterday. "Then we can hope, right?" Gideon allowed a rare, small smile to soften his face. "Yes, hope. That is what keeps people moving forward." No one knew what the future would bring. Maybe Earl would return. Maybe darker powers would rise. But one truth was certain the town had witnessed. Once people had spoken, silence could no longer reign. And here lies the lesson. A person, no matter his age, no matter his scars, can change everything if he dares to stand for what is right. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action, even when fear clenches the heart. So if you were Gideon, would you stay silent or step out of the shadows? If you were Clara, would you dare to speak, even if it placed you in danger? These questions are not only for the Wild West, but for us, here and now. If this story moved you, leave a like and follow the channel so you will not miss the next chapter. The West may have closed its doors, but its lessons live on.